What if you were shipwrecked on an unknown shore with no food, no map, and no idea where you were? What if you had to survive for 8 years, not as a conqueror, but as a captive, a traitor, and even a famous healer? This isn't a Hollywood movie. This is the wild, weird, and absolutely true story of the first Europeans to set foot in Texas. Get ready for a tale of gold, glory, and some seriously bad luck. Howdy, history fans. Welcome to the channel where we dig up the most exciting and unbelievable stories from the past. If you want to make sure you don't get lost in the historical wilderness, go ahead and chart a course to that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way, you won't miss a single expedition. Our story begins in 1519, a time when maps of the New World had huge, mysterious blank spaces. Spain, fresh off of Columbus's voyages, was the dominant superpower. And what do superpowers want? The Spanish crown and its ambitious explorers were driven by a powerful mix of motivations they called God, gold, and glory. They wanted to convert new souls to Christianity, find legendary amounts of treasure, and claim new lands to become famous and powerful. The Spanish governor of Jamaica, a guy named Francisco de Garay, was locked in a bitter rivalry with another famous explorer you might have heard of, Hernán Cortés, the guy who was busy conquering the Aztecs in Mexico. Garay was desperate to one-up Cortés. He was convinced there was a secret waterway, a strait, through this new continent that would be a shortcut to the riches of Asia. To find it, he sent out one of his most trusted captains, Alonso Álvarez de Pineda. Pineda set out with 4 ships and 270 men. Starting from Florida, he meticulously sailed west, becoming the first European to chart the entire coastline of the Gulf of Mexico, from Florida, past Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and finally, Texas. His journey was a huge navigational achievement, proving that Florida wasn't an island, but was part of a massive continent. And that coastline? Yep, that included the sandy shores of Texas. Pineda and his crew were the very first Europeans to lay eyes on our state. He called the land Amicho and spent over 40 days at the mouth of a large, muddy river he named the Rio de las Palmas. Historians are pretty sure this was the Rio Grande. He described seeing a large settlement of Native Americans and noted that the people in this new land were tall and well-built. He didn't find that secret passage to Asia because it didn't exist. When he tried to sail further south, he ran into his boss's rival, Cortés, who promptly arrested some of his men. Pineda retreated back to the Rio Grande and eventually returned to Jamaica with his groundbreaking map. That map was the very first document in Texas history and became Spain's primary evidence for its claim to the territory. So, what happened to Pineda? Well, his story doesn't have a happy ending. He returned to Mexico to try and start a colony, but his settlement was attacked by local Huastec Indians, and he was killed. While Pineda himself met a tragic end, his map had officially put Texas on the world stage. But the next explorer to arrive wouldn't just map the coast, he would be swallowed by it. Now meet Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. And yes, his name really means head of a cow. It was an honor, actually, given to an ancestor who helped win a major battle by marking a secret mountain pass with a cow's skull. But trust me, this guy's journey is one of the most unbelievable survival epics you'll ever hear. In 1527, he was the treasurer and second in command of a massive expedition led by Panfilo de Narvaez to colonize Florida. Narvaez was famously inept, and the expedition was a total disaster from the start. They landed on the wrong spot in Florida, lost their ships, and were tormented by hurricanes, starvation, disease, and constant attacks from native tribes who were not happy to see them. Things got so bad that the survivors, including Cabeza de Vaca, built 5 flimsy, overcrowded rafts, hoping to sail along the coast to a Spanish settlement in Mexico. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort. In November of 1528, after weeks at sea, a hurricane smashed the flimsy rafts near the Texas coast. Cabeza de Vaca's raft washed ashore on a sandy, windswept island he fittingly named Malhado, the Isle of Misfortune. We know it today as Galveston Island. He wrote in his journal, "The sea began to rise with great fury. There was nothing to be seen but mountains of water." The survivors were a pathetic sight. Cabeza de Vaca wrote they were so skinny, our bones could be counted. The local Karankawa people found them and, seeing the Spaniards weeping, sat down and wept with them out of pity. They brought them fish and roots to eat, but the situation was desperate. But that winter was brutal. The Spaniards, weakened and carrying diseases the natives had no immunity to, started dying rapidly. Then, a stomach illness swept through the Karankawa, killing half of their people. The terrified Karankawa blamed the strange newcomers and their powerful sky god. They nearly killed the last few Spaniards, but a wise Karankawa elder argued that if the Spaniards had the power to kill them with disease, they surely would have used it to save themselves first. That logic spared their lives, but their status changed overnight from guests to slaves. For the next several years, Cabeza de Vaca was forced into harsh labor by various bands of Karankawa and Coahuiltecan peoples. He described the backbreaking work of digging for edible roots in the coastal wetlands, often underwater, with his fingers raw and bleeding from the sharp oyster shells. It was a life of constant hunger and humiliation. But Cabeza de Vaca was clever. He observed the customs of the tribes and learned several of their languages. He noticed that different tribes were often at war and wouldn't trade with each other. He saw an opportunity. He became a traveling merchant, a neutral party who could move between groups. He would bring seashells, sharp conch shells for cutting, and sea beans from the coast to the interior tribes, trading them for bison hides, flint for arrowheads, and red ochre clay for face paint. This was his ticket to a kind of freedom. As a trader, he could travel the land, learn the geography, and search for his lost countrymen in a route back to Mexico. He was gathering intelligence every step of the way, but his life was about to take its most bizarre and unexpected turn. One day, some native people brought a man with an arrow stuck deep in his chest to one of Cabeza de Vaca's companions. Desperate, they begged the strange foreigner to heal him. Cabeza de Vaca, terrified but having no choice, took a knife, said a prayer, and performed what is now called the first recorded surgery in Texas history. He cut the man open, removed the arrowhead, and stitched him up. When the man survived, word of this incredible healing spread like wildfire. Was it a miracle? The power of faith? The placebo effect? We'll never know for sure. But the native people saw it as a sign of immense spiritual power. Soon, his fame as a healer exploded. He and his 3 remaining companions, including a man named Alonso Castillo, a captain named Andres Dorantes, and Dorantes' enslaved Moorish servant, Estebanico, were no longer seen as slaves but as powerful shamans. Hundreds, then thousands of people would follow them on their journey west, bringing them the sick to be healed, and offering them gifts of food, bison robes, and turquoise. For 8 years, he wandered across Texas and the American Southwest. He went from being a Spanish conqueror to a captive, a trader, and finally a revered medicine man. He saw a Texas that no European had ever seen. Finally, in 1536, near the Pacific coast of modern-day Mexico, he saw something he hadn't seen in 8 years, a Spaniard on horseback. He had found his people, but the reunion was incredibly tense. These Spaniards were slave catchers, and they were trying to enslave the Native Americans who were traveling with Cabeza de Vaca as his friends and followers.
Who are you? Why are you dressed like them?
I am Álvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca.
an officer of the Narvaez expedition. These people are with me. You will not harm them.
When Cabeza de Vaca finally returned to Spanish society, his stories were sensational. He advocated for more humane treatment of the native peoples, having seen them not as savages, but as complex communities. And most importantly for the Spanish crown, he passed on the tantalizing rumors he'd heard from tribes in the interior. Rumors of the 7 cities of Cibola, magnificent golden cities that supposedly lay to the north. These rumors of golden cities were exactly what the Spanish wanted to hear. They had already found immense wealth in the Aztec and Inca empires. Could Texas be the next jackpot? The desire for gold quickly overshadowed any other motivation. The treasure hunt was on. This kicked off a new wave of exploration. The Spanish sent out a massive expedition led by Francisco Vázquez de Coronado, who chased these rumors all across Arizona, New Mexico, and even into the Texas Panhandle and Kansas. He was guided by a man the Spanish called the Turk, who promised to lead them to a golden land called Quivira. But when Coronado finally reached Quivira, he didn't find cities of gold. He found a simple village of grass huts belonging to the Wichita people. Furious at being deceived, he had his guide executed. At the same time, another explorer, Luis de Moscoso, took over Hernando de Soto's expedition and wandered into East Texas. Both expeditions found the same thing: a lot of land, powerful native tribes like the Caddo, vast herds of hunchbacked cows, bison, but absolutely no gold. After these expensive failures, Spain basically gave up on Texas for a while. Their official reports concluded that the land was too vast, the natives too hostile, and the treasure was a myth. They had bigger fish to fry in Mexico and South America, where the silver and gold mines were making them rich. Texas was put on the back burner. Or so they thought. And that's where we'll leave it for today. The Spanish thought they had Texas all to themselves, a vast, empty backyard they could deal with later. They had no idea that a rival power from across the ocean was about to accidentally crash their party and change the future of Texas forever. The story of the French in Texas is a wild ride of ambition, colossal mistakes, and a fort made of doomed dreams. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the age of contact. What part of Cabeza de Vaca's story did you find most incredible? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to and ring that bell so you'll be the first to know when we explore the French fiasco at Fort St. Louis in Part 2. Until next time, stay curious.